Video chat, we start with our cold open, which is what's going to happen is the topic is hacking process, and our two guests here, Ed Bellis and David Peach, are going to go back and forth coming up with as many issues that have to do with process, and they're going to go through as many as they can in 1 minute. Are you guys ready? Ed, David, yes?
Ready.
All right, here we go. Here's the countdown. Watch the clock, as many as you can in a minute.
Misalignment.
Communicating risks.
Unintended consequences.
Pick it up, come on.
Alerts generated with no one to look at them.
Network externalities.
Security without business context.
Reliance on manual tasks.
Internal standards not being actually standard.
Dependency problems.
Remediation.
Lack of ownership.
Vulnerability prioritization.
Ooh, I like that one. Lack of enforcement.
Challenges with inventory management.
Doesn't include all stakeholders.
Going in different directions.
Focused on the symptoms and not the root cause.
Ooh. How do we do?
I need a judgment.
Buzzer beater.
I've got Ed for 9 and David for 8.
Oh.
Under the wire, Ed. Under the wire.
Here's the opening music.
I got to go first.
Welcome, everybody. The Cisco series video chat is ready to begin.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Cisco series video chat. That opening bit, and I don't know what it was, but it sounded like you were trying to do an impression of an NPR reporter there as you're slowly reading. It's a game show. You're supposed to spit them out as fast as you possibly
David.
can.
It's a strategy.
and it worked. It worked.
All right, today's topic is hacking process, an hour of critical thinking about delivering and receiving the right information to the right people at the right time. Here we go. Our guests, who you just met, are David Peach, Head of Information Risk at The Economist Group, and Ed Bellis, CTO and co-founder of Kenneth Security. They've got a lot of big news today, which we're going to address at the very beginning. Thanks to our sponsor, Kenneth Security, for sponsoring this very episode of the podcast. Thank you. They've been, by the way, phenomenal sponsors. So thank you, Kenna and Ed, for being such a great supporter of the series. All right. 6 different ways to participate. I forgot to mention last week, and the one that's been added is number 3 there. So chat room, you can chat in the chat room. Submit your bad ideas. Get them in now. Your worst ideas with regard to hacking process. 3, at 20 minutes past the hour, we go from bad ideas to good ideas. What are your best strategies for dealing with process? And make sure, by the way, you type, best strategy or best idea or good idea or whatever. Best strategy, so we know it's actually a best strategy going, because we're going to have a poll of those as well. Join us on video at any time by just typing in Bring Me On. We'll try to get on as many of you as possible. Ask a question at any time. Both David and Ed will try to field as many of your questions as possible. And you can also vote for your favorite question as well. All right, today's question. We played the speed round already. Submit your bad ideas and questions. Start doing that now. The poll will go live at 20 minutes past the hour. Vote for your favorite bad idea. Then tell us what's your best strategy when it comes to hacking process. Then we will play the Department of Yes. Then you will vote for your favorite questions some more. And then the 2 people that I pick for the Department of Yes, again, it depends on who you vote up, we'll have those best bad idea contenders face off to argue that their idea is truly the worst idea. Last questions and final advice we'll deal with. And then at the end of the hour, we'll do our meetup, which is a lot of fun. That's where we have all those series of one-on-one meetings. Also, next week, our topic is going to be hacking the speed of business, an hour of critical thinking on how security can keep up with accelerating business growth. That little rectangle at the bottom of the screen is a link so you can register for that video chat, which is next Friday. You can click that link at any time during this video chat. It will not take you out of this video chat. You'll very much stay in it, but it'll allow you to register for next week's as well. Pretty convenient, huh? All right, stick around for our meetup. There'll be a link at the bottom. Well, actually, it's not there right now, so let me just put that there. Okay, let's get out of this and go to our actual discussion. Now, we are given the huge news that just dropped a few hours ago. Ed's company, Kenneth Security, is I think the proper term is Cisco has announced its intent to purchase Kenneth Security. Ed, what can you tell us? Before we go into the discussion of hacking process, we want to know, since you are a co-founder, first of all, how long ago did you start Kenneth Security?
Just over 10 years ago. So,
Okay.
Overnight. We or Cisco announced this morning their intent to acquire Kenneth Security, expected to close in the Cisco's fiscal fourth quarter, which, if you know anything about it, I think their fiscal year ends in the summer, so in July. Right. So that said, we will be part of the Cisco Security Business Group. We'll continue to be in the risk-based vulnerability management space, doing and building and selling all of the things that we currently do today. We will be part of the security platforms business there. Expect us to be integrating with things like SecureX and their XDR platform, et cetera. But, it's still business as usual for us, as they say.
Still business as usual. And may I ask, when did your conversation start with Cisco? How long has it been in?
It's been going on for a few months. We've been talking to the folks over at Cisco for a few months now.
All right. Well, I just want to say congratulations. That's awesome news for you. And by the way, how much credit can the CISO series take for this?
Oh, probably about at least 98.
Good. That's what I thought. Okay. All right. Let's get into our discussion about the hacking process. And again, if you have any questions, anybody in the audience, please send them out. So let's just start with the really basics. You guys listed off a lot of really big issues with regards to process. I'll start with you, David Peach. What would you say is kind of the biggest process issue that you are constantly trying to manage?
I think one of the challenges that we have is kind of communicating and understanding the context around kind of the risks that we're trying to do. Trying to make it clear that we are understanding what it is our business is doing, and making sure that. But that's often in a kind of context, a challenge that I see with other security teams, other security leaders, not really relating things to what is it that we're trying to do here? Why is this happening? Why are we not doing? Why are we going to do this or not doing this?
I think the word intent was used in what do you guys use the word intent? So I think knowing people's intentions on both sides, it sounds like what the issue is. Yes, David?
Exactly. Intent, context, making sure that you're not also making assumptions. So about what is this person or this department or this team trying to do? What are their goals? What are our goals? Open communications is an area definitely that we focus on.
Ed, you're nodding your head on this with regards to intent. Where do you see it falling through, and where have you seen sort of the best successes in dealing with intent?
Yeah, so when I think about intent, I also think about incentives and kind of end goals or objectives, right? And if you don't have, and I think this gets back to probably I think it was the first one I put out there on the list, which is misalignment, right? Where you've got one organization or one group within an organization that is trying to do X and another one whose goal is Y, and they design these processes to meet X and Y individually. They sometimes conflict a lot, right? So, I mean, obviously I can talk to the risk-based vulnerability management approach, but there's, you name it within security. I feel like if you got a team that's, in operations is a great example, technical operations, who's maybe they're chartered with something around uptime or stability and all of these different things, and you've got to manage the process of security risks through vulnerability management, all of these other things. Well, one of the things that you have to do with vulnerability management, yes, you're managing risk, but a lot of those things require downtime, require reboots, require introducing additional operational risk because I'm changing code on those platforms, right? So you've got to be able to ensure that when you're including all of the stakeholders, but you're all aligning around a common objective and can design the process around that.
I said, what are common, you talked about common broken processes. Which one, let me ask, do you find is the easiest to improve? Like, like maybe the easiest to deal with and, receive like the greatest ROI, if that's the best way to describe it, David?
That's a hard one, actually. Well, one of the things, I don't think there's any easy ones necessarily. One of the things I would say is it's easy to be able to, well, nothing's easy, relatively easy to talk to people, get on the same page as them. To Ed's point about kind of misalignment, there's a lot of issues that can happen if you are either not talking to them or kind of Ed's point about kind of different directions and different kind of end goals. Mm-hmm. That can also happen if one side is making assumptions about what the other side is doing. We're going to try and secure their mission. We think their mission is over here. Actually, they're going to go in this way. So actually, why are you even? This is not helping us. So you have to make sure that you are on the same page as the business units and leaders and teams that you are supporting. So then that can be quite easy. Can be hard depending on the organization.
So would it be appropriate to say, and again, change what I'm saying if there's something different, but just simple conversations with all the sort of business unit heads is the easiest way to sort of initiate and begin process improvement? Yes, David?
I would say yes. I think that's a definitely. Then you'll get there's a kind of like a feeling like you understand what their goals are, you understand what their motivations are, their intents, to use the phrase you used before, and then you can make sure that you are making sure your controls meet what their goals are.
Is there anything? All of this sounds like it's still a lot of heavy lifting. It's still a lot of conversations. There's no simple process improvements, or are there, Ed?
Dealing with people is the messy part, right?
Yeah.
If it was just technology, that part would be easy. There is no simple solution here. It is, and one of the things that I've noticed, and it's almost a cultural thing within an organization. It's not only about working with all of these different folks who might have different objectives and different things, but assuming good intent, right? Assuming that everybody's coming to the table because they are trying to get something done that they've been chartered with. It's not just, I'm out to get security operations or development, or, I don't, everybody has good intent. So just talking to David's point, right? Just actually sitting down and talking with these folks and understanding what those objectives are. I'll bet you can map a lot of the stuff that you're trying to get done with a lot of the stuff that they're trying to get done.
And to your point, Ed, if you understand what that other group's goal is, then you can sell what you're trying to do in a way that kind of matches their goal. So you can communicate it in a way that matches their. So they get the what my old boss used to call "What's in it for me?" WIIFM, right? You have to sell it in their context, their terms.
Yep. Go ahead.
Well, go ahead, and then I got some questions. Go ahead.
Yeah. We always have heard shift left, bake security in, all of these different things, right? But one of the things that's worked really well I've seen at organizations is don't break somebody else's existing process. Try to fit inside of their process, right? Mm-hmm. If they already have a way of getting things done, insert your goals into that way of getting things done. And then you'll have a much higher rate of success than saying, I've got an additional process now that you have to follow, and it's outside of the things that you're doing today, and it's outside of the tool sets that you're working with today. That almost never works.
Yeah, more work, less money, not interested.
Yeah.
All right. A lot of these questions are kind of very, very similar here. I'm going to start with this one. It comes from, I think, who's this? From Jonathan Sneed, I think. Yeah, Jonathan Sneed. He asks, how do you combat the peer principle, which, excuse my ignorance, I'm not that familiar with, and the frozen middle? I'm assuming, people getting defensive. I think that's really what the question is. And I think, David, you kind of just addressed in a moment ago, saying, what's in it for me? So first of all, when do people become frozen, and how do you work your way out of that, David?
I would say, if you want to try and kind of like freeze people out and make people feel not consulted, you would take exactly the point that the strategy that Ed just talked about. Kind of, rather than kind of, I want to understand what you're doing and how I can help you. If you just say, kind of understand what it is that you're doing. I've already figured out the solution to this without your help. Here it is. It's going to entirely change your ways of working, give you extra work. That is going to be like an express lane to people feeling rejected and disengaged and not helped by the security team.
By the way, Peter Principle, people get promoted to the highest level of incompetence.
Oh, did I maybe answer the wrong question?
No.
That's not really helping.
What say you, Ed, to this question about like when people get stuck, either avoid, the situation of getting stuck, or, let's assume we've all had to deal with it. How do you work your way out of it?
Yeah, I mean, one of the kisses of death is I forget exactly the term, but it's essentially like analysis paralysis, right? I'm gonna just and probably even what I find that's kind of a symptom of another altruism, for lack of a better term, which is that perfection is the enemy of the good, right? I've always been a fan of making incremental improvements. So we're doing this. How could we do this 5% better? Not how can we perfect this, right? Because there's always going to be something that's going to get away of perfection. That's going to be a ton of work. It's going to take too long. And then people are going to be stuck, right? They're going to sit there and they're not going to provide any action. So having a bias towards action, towards incremental improvements, I think goes a long ways there.
I completely agree with what Ed said. In fact, I agree with it so much. I have a little post-it note next to my monitor that says "Perfect is the enemy of good" to remind myself.
Is that your mantra every day? You repeat it over and over again.
That's right.
Now, this is a question from Craig Herter. It's extremely similar to the last question, but but this has to do with conflicts. So how do you help deconflict the different priorities? So when two groups have two different priorities, and he says priorities between operations and security risk. So security risk, you have your priorities, and operations has its priorities. And let's start with this. Give me an example of something that would be a conflict, and then how you work your way out of it. Ed.
Dang it.
You want David to answer first?
Yeah, for
David,
sure.
can you answer this one first?
I think there's probably things in here around something that Ed mentioned up front, actually, around uptime and kind of maintaining patching updates, doing those kind of stuff. If your goal is maintaining uptime, right? And that's where your goal is. Of course, it's going to introduce conflict if someone wants to be able to make a change to the thing you're maintaining uptime on by doing security updates. Actually, I ran into this exact thing, and I think my approach here was to say, actually, maybe we can trade some kind of short-term disruption for long-term disruption. By not applying these updates, which are going to cause us short-term pain, then we're kind of like storing up long-term issues down the road where we end up having some terrible security issue, which is going to be a much bigger outage headache.
Yeah, and so speaking of that, with so many people pretty much working 24-hour, and if you have a team that's global, like, is there ever a good time? Like those quote good times, when everyone worked 9 to 5, well, 11 p.m. on a Sunday usually always worked out, but that's not even that. Like, does there exist good times for downtime, David?
No,
there are none.
Especially in a global org, right?
Yeah, but that's what I was saying.
Exactly.
Like everyone is, especially now, so much more. Like, so how do you, when there literally is no good time for downtime, how do you do that? You just say, guys, I mean, you put the alerts out, nothing's going to work these few hours, or how do you deal with it, Ed?
First of all, we need to make that a saying. There is no good time for downtime.
Get out a t-shirt.
Exactly. So, I mean, the good news here is with, certainly the modern tech stacks and things like that, it's not like I take a box down and I take a service down, right? There's multiple boxes all running to perform that service up. So it's not like you're taking downtime in that sense. Now, the other thing to point out here is, this is kind of a very academic debate about operations who is talking about they must have uptime, and security who must eliminate security risk. The reality is that they have a series of objectives, both of those, and a lot of those actually will overlap with each other. So it's not like I am singularly focused on just uptime, right? Because that's just not a thing anymore. And while introducing operational risk can reduce security risk, reducing security risk can also decrease operational risk for things that David was just talking about earlier, right? Trading it off for the long term. There are certainly one of the things that certainly in an agile environment, you talk about lots of small, tiny changes instead of massive changes that are high risk, right? So am I going to continuously patch this system on a regular cadence, which is going to mean that each one of those patches is introducing less risk? Or am I going to wait and let them all pile up and then have a whole lot of risk that I get introduced operationally by applying all of them at once, right? So there is trade-offs.
This great question from John Grimm. I like this one. I'm going to start with you, David. Do you go with quick wins and chip away at longer term strategic goals? Or the flip of that, do you focus on the strategic goals and then knock out the quick wins as you go along? So I guess the way of saying this is, are you upfront of this is what we ultimately want to achieve, and you kind of figure this out by chipping away at it, or you keep that long-term strategic goal a little bit hidden and you get to that point with your quick wins, and then lo and behold, they don't realize it, but you got what you wanted? David?
I think the right approach to me feels like a little bit of a mix of the two. So keeping your kind of strategic kind of longer term objectives in mind, and absolutely making sure that you're going to share those, because like I talked about before, kind of open communication is a kind of key here to make sure that everyone understands where it is you're going. But at the same time, you're not going to you're going to win friends and kind of motivate your kind of teams by saying, look, we are actually making progress here. We've got a little bit of an agile kind of approach to this, and we are making kind of short gains, and we can roll those up into over time big gains.
By the way, before I go to you, Ed, I just want to mention that the poll is live, and we're going from bad ideas to good ideas. And I see Craig has already knocked us out with his first good idea: leverage organizational culture to capitalize on processes that work and then socialize that to the enterprise. So, hey, if it works, let everybody else know. Great tip. So give us your good ideas, but also vote on the poll for the best bad idea, because we'll be playing in 7 minutes our next game, Department of Yes. All right. And I go to you the same question that John Grimm was asking about, like, how do you go about it? Is it, which way are you chipping away? Are you making it clear what your goal is, or are you getting there in increments?
Yeah. Yes. That's to point out what David answered, right? So really the big strategic goals I think of as themes, right? And then along those themes, you have a lot of tactical things that need to get done that should align with that, right? You don't want to do a bunch of small wins that actually are, opposite of your objectives or your goals. But there's probably 15 different things that I got to do to satisfy this larger objective, right? So getting those both quick wins, and some of them will be quick and some of them will be less quick, but you're continuously chipping away at that. So if anything, I would lean towards the latter of your question, if that makes sense.
All right. Paul Lanzi has a good question here. And I like the fact that he says you're not allowed to answer both to this question, kind of like the what's worse game we play. So you do have to you got to choose one. David, here you go. What's more important? From Paul Lanzi of Remediant: good process design or there being a clear decision maker? You got to pick one.
Clear decisions are, I think, if I got to go for one, clear decisions are gonna win out over there.
The clear decisions. All right. Process design or clear decisions. Ed, which one?
Agreed. Somebody has to own it, right? In the end, somebody has to make the decision. So if you've got this great process, but then nobody can actually make a decision or create an action, then what's the point?
Good answer for both of you. All right. I'll give you credit for both of that. All right. The crowd appreciates it as well. All right. Okay. back to, we are, just so you know, we're, how far are we? We're 5 minutes away from playing our game. Let's go to the next question here. What we have is, this is a good question. And I think, does this come from Jonathan again? Yes, Jonathan Sneed. He asked this question. And the answer to this actually might be CISO, by the way, I'm thinking. Is there a role that breaks down silos, focus on process improvement across the organizations if it's a thing I can't find it? Is the answer to this CISO, Ed?
I've seen that. I've seen that from good CISOs for sure. I would argue, hopefully, program management or something like that. If you have that type of function, chief of staff, that type of function, will also serve that as well.
Okay. What do you think, David Peach?
I agree. I couldn't have said it better myself, actually. I think definitely that the roles that are those kind of roles I mentioned, I've got a good kind of like pan organizational kind of wide kind of what's happening in these different kind of entities, and they can kind of like string that together and say, do you realize that this guy over here is doing exactly the same thing as you're doing? And if we can like just introduce you to, we can make everything better.
All right. By the way, we do have some votes in, but I know we have a lot more people on that are participating that have voted. So if you have not voted, get in your vote now, because we only got a few minutes. And if you have not clicked the button at the very bottom of the screen to register for next week's video chat, go ahead and do that right now. Click on it. You're not going to get out of this video chat. It'll be fine. All right. These. Let me actually. I'm going to look at one. Here's a good question that no one asked. This is ones that I prepared. How do you, and because I'm dealing this with on something else I'm reading, but how do you weigh business forward efforts? We want to move forward, but dealing with technical debt. David, I'll start with you on this, because I'm sure technical debt is something that you have to deal with all the time. You know, your organization's been around for a while. I'm sure you have some technical debt. Yes?
Yeah, the Economist Group started in 1843. So
how much tech debt did they have back then?
We haven't got any actual 178-year-old systems, but there are some kind of there's definitely some technical debt, and I think we've had kind of worked on these kind of challenges a few times, and definitely the approach is. I hate to kind of do the same thing I just did on the last question, but it kind of like a mix of the two is the solution. You can't just if you only go for kind of like business forward kind of product functionality kind of stuff, then you're going to have going to move things forward and moving the needle, but you're going to just churn out tech debt on the back end of that.
But I'm assuming kind of they go hand in hand. Like if you have a business forward effort, are you cutting some technical debt in the process of that, or are they completely separate decisions being made?
It definitely can do, and sometimes those kind of if the effort to remove tech debt involves doing kind of business forward stuff, but not always, right? So if there is two different tracks where there's kind of some business forward kind of new things, but not decommissioning and doing things on the old stuff, then you have to make sure you're doing kind of both sides at the same time.
Is there a decision making process, like, you know, I gotta assume you could just do some basic ROI calculations, like, all right, if we're going to take this on, it's going to take this much time, it's going to cost this much, and if we lose this tech debt, it's going to take this, you know, much time to deal with it. I gotta assume that there's some basic spreadsheets you're dealing with on something like this. Yes, David?
I wouldn't describe anything in this area as basic. There's definitely lots of different kind of stakeholders and motivations. Like we said before, a lot of this is about understanding everyone's motivations and taking the big holistic picture to make the right choices.
What
about you, Ed? How do you deal with tech debt and business forward efforts?
Yeah, it's not. There's not always a clear cut and dry ROI per se, but there's definitely a prioritization process that's attached with it, right? And one of the, if you are able to do it, kind of creating these swim lanes of an X% of your work is going to go towards technical debt. So you're constantly churning out some debt as you're also doing business forward projects, as you're doing things that generate revenue. So that you're constantly maintaining as you go along, you're in a much better situation. Now, we don't have any systems from the 1800s, so I can't speak intelligently about that.
10-year-old company versus 178.
Yeah, it's a little different for sure. It's to be fair.
So hold on. What was the publishing process 178 years ago? What do you know of The Economist's history, David?
What do I know of The Economist's history? In our boardroom in London, there's a whole kind of like wall absolutely filled with the past issues. And that's definitely a kind of a very rich part of the company. It was originally I think it was a journal that was focused on free market, very much as it is now, kind of free market kind of ideals and that kind of stuff. It started in London and with like a small circulation. It's not too far away from what it is now.
I'm sure that the first day they had to adopt computers was a big technical debt discussion.
We're
going to give up this press, this darn thing I'm cranking all the time.
Exactly. The whole kind of process is going to technical evolution to kind of keep up with this kind of stuff.
All right. Well, hey, we got a call.
Hello, welcome to the Department of Yes, where no request is ever rejected.
All right, we have some really, really good bad ideas that come in, and I love the very first one. Being that Ed is an old hat at this game, I'm going to make him go first here on this very first one. I like this one. So you're going to live stream your Security Operations Center on Twitch. Got this? And you're going to implement process via the comments. So if someone leaves a comment, you do that. Ed, why is this a good idea?
I mean, this is so easy. It's the wisdom of the crowd, right? I mean, why have one person making all of these decisions when you can have a million?
A million. Now, there's the obvious wrinkle in here that maybe there's just going to be some kids wanting you to do incredibly stupid things. Yes?
Yeah, but there will be a lot of them, so there's more, and more is always better.
More. I don't know how I feel about this one. I'm not going to give you a little too facetious for me. David, give me a better answer that's not as facetious as what Ed just gave me.
I mean, if you are opening up your SOC to the live streaming it online, you're just promoting openness. Openness is always good, right? Transparency, making sure clear communications. That's what we're doing. What I've been advocating from the beginning.
I like that answer.
Wow.
Ed, the rookie comes on and takes you down. All right. All right, here,
I'll get used to it.
All right, next one. Hire a professional Dungeons and Dragons dungeon master to arbitrate your process and roll a d20 as needed. So really, your process is a roll of the die. Ed, why is this a good idea?
Well, as someone who is, really data driven, appreciates statistics, understands kind of a method to probability, if you will, right? If I already know what my probability is going to be, in the sense that I have a 20-sided die that is consistent probability, I can start to plan around that. I can create processes around that. I can effectively build a program around that.
All right. Bravo! By the way, I forgot to ask, who gave these two bad ideas? I'm going to guess Masako gave. They were both your ideas. Masako gave both of them. So you get to argue against yourself because we have to have you come on to argue them both. All right. Well, David, here, great answer, Ed, by the way. Why do you like this idea about the Dungeons Master?
So I think that one thing we just talked about before is having clear decisions. And if we just leaving all of our decisions down to the roll of a die, then there is no kind of arbitrary kind of like back and forth. I'm not really sure. If the dice have spoken, that's it.
Oh, yeah. I like it. That's good. All right. The die has spoken. By the way, that should just be the attitude everyone's at the boardroom. We've had the magic 8-ball thing come up, but if you just roll a die, like nobody speaks. The die is spoken. The oracle is spoken. We're done, everybody. It's over. I love that.
Imagine how short meetings will be.
Exactly. All right. So we're going to have at 40 minutes past the hour, the poll of the good ideas are going to go up. We've seen actually a lot of good ideas. Hold on, let me scroll back and I can see one of the, here we go. John Grimm had a good idea. Identify and lock down the constants, manage the variables. So let me ask this off of John's comment. Ed, what are the constants in process that you don't have to manage?
I'd
Or
love
do
to
they
answer
not
that.
exist? Is John's
Yeah.
good ideas like good luck on finding the constants?
Yeah, I'm blanking on that one. I don't know.
David, are there any constants besides death and taxes?
That's a challenging one. I think if constants, the constant is change, right? That's to use a very well-worn kind of business phrase. But I can't. Maintaining change is that what we're saying?
Always maintaining change. Well, always forward thinking is also a good way of thinking. And also, Brian Colt has a good idea here. Apply risk management principles to process management. Ensure the process owner understands the risks, mitigations, and accepts the residual risk. As you are someone who deals with risk, David, specifically for your job, although obviously, Ed, this is your business as well, but I know that is in your title, David. How much I got to assume all your day you're communicating the risk. Do you feel that you're getting acceptance and people say, I get it, I understand what's my risk, I sign off on the risk? Does that actually happen, David?
I think that if you are not all the time, but definitely that's the goal, right? Is to have people understand what is that we're talking about here. I'm not just suggesting this kind of crazy control. To go back to what we were talking about in the beginning, it's not just something I thought of on the way over here that's to cause you problems. This is a hopefully well thought out decision or solution to the problem to reduce the risk. And the risk is this. Well, one thing we have found a lot of success with is using analogies. And I think if you can use analogies to help people understand what it is that I'm suggesting here, we can find a lot of success. To make it that really clear, we have yet to find a part of our security discussions that we can't analogize, if that's a word, to owning a house. To house security, all of the challenges that are there, responsibility for maintenance and monitoring, all that kind of stuff. That kind of stuff can go a long way in helping people to understand. And once everyone understands, then you can be on the same page.
By the way, John Grimm did clarify what he means by constant, which I think is a good clarification. Constant equals, is it in the incident response playbook? The variable are the specifics to the incident. So I thought those a good way to define it right there. We are going to just be a few minutes from our poll for the best ideas or the good ideas in general. Well, let me ask the same question that I asked David to you, Ed, with regards to communicating the risk. I mean, I assume that, with your vulnerability management solution, what you deal with you prioritizing, part of this is trying to communicate the levels of risk and having people understand that. Yes?
Absolutely. In fact, it goes back to David's comment at the very beginning of the show, which was also that context matters, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not just about any one individual risk too, right? You talked about residual risk, right? By accepting this, we now know that our overall risk in this area is X, right? Is that still okay with the business, right? Do we still feel good about that as to move forward? And if not, then what should we do? What are the trade-offs that we can do to lower that to an acceptable level? All
right, let's go to our next question that comes in. Here we go. Culture is usually, and by the way, I was talking about this too. This comes from Craig Herter. Culture is usually the biggest process, as Ed alluded to. What are some practical steps one can take to move the culture into a process that actually moves the enterprise into a security-centric organism? Because, I was just actually seeing this post on Reddit saying, security is not it's not an occupation, it's an actual mindset. So how do you change, I know it's an ongoing thing and there's whole security training companies that do this, but what are things that one can do to improve that culture, that process culture, so people are more security minded? Ed, I'm sorry.
Okay, I'll take it. So a couple things, right? So one, culture is a big thing, right? And you gotta, it's an old cliche, but if you don't have support at the management level, then it's probably not going to go very far. So you certainly need to do that. But it's almost like evangelizing this, right, across departments, whether you're embedding people into different areas of the org to be your advocate, because security can't always be there, and just being part of that conversation. I feel like it's a heck of a lot of evangelizing across your org to get cultural shifts across the org, especially a very large org that becomes a long journey, really.
David, what have you seen works? And by the way, I just noticed the good idea poll just went up. Go ahead, David.
I think I agree with what Ed said. Excuse me. The challenges here about changing people's hearts and minds, to use a kind of well-worn phrase. And I think that by using the thinking about what's in it for me and understanding the person you're talking to's their context, their challenges, their motivations, what are they worried about, then you can kind of understand what it is that you can, or how to present the changes that you might want them to make. And I remind my team all the time, there's very few people in the organization whose job title involves security, right? Everyone else has got a different job title that isn't something that is motivated or incentivized around security, but you can kind of try and do things which kind of fit in with their processes to make it seem to make it part of their kind of thought process as well.
I want to quote something that Dutch Schwartz said here in the chat room. Use the levers you have, the values, the attitudes, and beliefs. So most organizations have, essentially belief areas in this space, to shape your culture by hiring and by socializing. So it's like, this is no one's starting at ground zero. If you had ground zero, you'd barely have an organization, right? So use what you got to move on. I think that's, great advice, Dutch. All right, let's go back to our questions. Oh, by the way, we are 4 minutes away before bringing Misako on, who I guess is going to be bipolar and arguing with herself. I don't know, because she came up with the two bad ideas that we use. So kudos to you, Misako. By the way, correct me if I'm pronouncing your first name incorrectly. And you can do that when you come on, or type and tell me phonetically how I should be pronouncing it. So I'm sure you deal with this all the time. You are crying. Hopefully that's a good sign or a bad sign. What kind of security team? This comes from Mark. Let me see if Mark has a last name to him, or you can speak up, Mark, to it. No, he doesn't have a last name. Sorry for you. Mark is like Cher. What can a security team do when the marketing team wants to rush an app out to market without proper testing? Let me begin with, how often does this happen? And B, how do you manage it? I'll start with you, David.
How often does this happen? Less and less. This has been a thing that we have kind of dealt with in the past.
And by the way, how have you gotten to less and less?
By taking a I feel like I'm kind of saying the same thing over and over, but kind of to work with the stakeholders and say, look, if we understanding that it's Friday and you want this app to launch on Monday, here's what we can do for you in this context. If we knew about this a little earlier next time, then we can give you a lot better help. We can help you during the process, during the design phase, and say, look, we really want to, you're trying to build this kind of app. Here's the kind of stuff we've seen work well with other teams, other departments. You can put that in. It makes your app simpler to develop. Actually, down the road, when we get to testing, it will mean that you will have less security findings, and it makes your app easier and cheaper to develop. That's
good. Ed, how do you deal with this?
Yeah,
and being that you're a security company, do you probably deal with it far less?
I hope so. So, I mean, again, it's cultural like anything else, but also, things happen, right? And sometimes emergencies where you do have to get something out the door quickly. And that's where you can show them how quickly you can work with them to get it tested, to get everything that they need to get it out the door. And just make a point of it. This is the exception, right? And I'm going to work with you, and I'm standing right alongside with you because I know you got to get this out, and I want you to get this out too. And we all want to get our jobs done, right? And we all have the ultimate company objectives at the heart here. But it's got to be an exception, right? If you're doing this every single time, you're going to burn your goodwill with me, right? And it's a cultural thing.
I want to read one quote. I don't know who said this, so please speak up if you're the one. This is one of the highest voted up good ideas. And I'm just going to read actually the second half of it. People are more likely to help you out and fix vulnerabilities when you're easy to work with. It goes a long way to just be helpful and easy to work with. And I'll speak that. And we have Masako. By the way, am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Masako.
You see, I didn't. Oh, that's not Masako. I screwed it up. Masako, my apologies. All right.
It's okay.
Masako, you are now going to have to, you must have a favorite of your two bad ideas. So let me just say that. Which one is your favorite and why is that? I mean, I know which one mine is, but I want to hear from you.
As a bad idea, maybe the live stream security operations center.
Why do you think that's the worst idea?
Well, I guess any comment chatter section, there's always trolls and rude behavior, bad language, and bad advice. Except, of course, your chat.
It's like flypaper to trolls. Like,
exactly.
We come to this thing, I'll do whatever you tell me to do. And as I've said, the internet's often a game of bad to worse. Like how, and then everyone says something, do this, and and everyone's going to try to one up each other like we get in the best bad idea game. So my feeling is that's exactly what's going to happen. Ed, which bad idea was your favorite of the two? Again, it was the Dungeon Master with the rolling of the die or the live stream. Which one did you think is?
I have to agree that I think the live stream was definitely the worst idea for everything that was stated above. And to your point, right, I feel like the more the people that get involved, the more trolls that get involved, the worse it will get because they will just one up each other until that just becomes untenable.
Yes. By the way, as if the internet is a game of bad to worse. Untenable, not going into specifics, usually gets into the horrible. Like, very, very negative and horrible. Yeah. David, Did you have a favorite of the two? Is it the same or something else?
I'll go for the same one. I think that while Masako was talking, I think you could flip it into a positive by putting our own kind of like honeypot, kind of like counterintelligence operatives into the chat as well. Try and gather information about the people that are making these kind of comments and why. Maybe that's a way we can kind of make it succeed.
Yeah, because if you think about the D&D, like I don't know much about D&D from other than Stranger Things, but D&D, it seems like the master gives you some sense of control, right, while having some randomness. So maybe that's a little bit better than just the straight-on trolls coming in. And
Masako, let me ask you this, and this might help other people who are playing the best bad idea game. Do you have a specific strategy when you're coming up with bad ideas?
Well, I'm kind of new to it, but I've been studying a little bit. But I think it's just, finding things that might sound like a good idea, but that are kind of might have some goodness in the idea, but are also badness. So,
bad. Well, I will say this. What I look for, in the absolute winner, because I ultimately, I can't say whether you're going to win or not yet, because that's decided the weekend, because, again, dozens have come in that I have not looked at. It's the visual, and why I like the first one the most, the visual, because I can see actually that playing itself out. I know how horrible they go. If the visual makes you cringe, which that first one did, that's a great bad idea. You want the visual to make you go, oh my God, no, that's it. All right. Well, kudos to you, Masako. My apologies for not pronouncing your first name incorrectly. My guess is I'm not the only one who's ever done that. But going forward, I'll put the accent on the first syllable. All right. Thank you very much. All right. We have got just about 11 minutes left in our video chat. Let's do this. Let's do summaries now, and then we'll go to questions because I don't want to beat out on the summaries. I'll start with you, Ed. Looking at your process today, as opposed to 2 to maybe even 5 years ago, what have you seen to be the most significant changes? And also speak for some of your customers as well, because I'm sure you have to deal with that as well with them. Like, what has been the biggest change today as compared to the past?
Yep. So, I mean, first and foremost, without a doubt, it's actually people for the first time that I can remember in the security industry is people working together outside of security, right? Working with operations and actually going back to David's sticky note of perfection is the enemy of the good, right? We see a lot of people that are like, okay, let's go out and work together. I can't get to perfect, right? It's too much work. It's too costly. There's too many resources that I don't have. But if you tell me if I can get here, next week, next month, next quarter, and you're good with that, I can do that for you, right? And so people working together, I mean, it sounds hokey, but it is big. And I would say the other piece of that is what we talked about before, which is I need to fit inside of your processes. I don't need to create new processes for you to adhere to, or additional processes, I should say.
Good thing. David, what has been the biggest changes for you?
I'm not sure what to add. Ed did an amazing summary there of kind of things in terms of integration. One thing I just kind of building on what Ed said, but kind of integration between tools, processes, between people, that has been a kind of transformational thing, and it does absolutely help being able to build relationships between groups, relationships between tools, where you can kind of say, here's the thing, take that thing and kind of run with it. That kind of closer working, breaking down the silos to be able to kind of achieve the kind of shared goals. That is the area we're looking at here.
All right. Let me remind everybody, click the link at the bottom of the screen to register for next week's video chat. If you have not already done that, please do that, because we'd all like to have you back here again. And we do have we've got a good amount of time. I'll do the final wrap up last few minutes, but stick around because we're going to be doing the icebreaker, which is a lot of fun. That's where we get to all have our one-on-one meetups with each other, and it's completely random, and you'll have fun with it if you've never done it before. If you've done it before, you know how fun it is, and that's why you're coming back. Great. All right, let's go to our questions we have here. From Matthew Bybee, who's the CISO over at Satcom Direct. What are some practical ways that you can articulate the value of having and documenting your processes to the everyday person, management, etc.? First of all, are you documenting your processes, David Peach?
Of course.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Well, to a level that we can work with, and that's practical. I think the first thing is that nothing. To go back to what we said before, perfect is the enemy of good, right? You could do something, start small, demonstrate value, then kind of increase from there. Just to go back to how do you the question was about how do you sell this to how do you communicate the value here? Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I think that putting things in the context of the people you're working with to make sure they understand why it is that you're asking them to do this, making sure they understand that you share their goals, you share their kind of end motivations, and you are to Ed's point about the situation where someone comes to you and kind of says, we would need this app testing. It's Friday. It's launching Monday. Help us right now. Mm-hmm. Absolutely, you can kind of get a lot of good kind of shared. What's the word? Kind of motivation and kind of like good karma kind of thing by doing that kind of thing. But absolutely, if you carry on kind of being that kind of doormat almost, it will come back and bite you in the end.
I actually jumped to this question from Catherine Baker. And I'm just skipping to her question at the last part of this. Before I ask her question, let me ask you, do you have people on your teams that still kind of operate under the Department of No? Do those people actually exist on your teams, David and Ed? Maybe not Ed, because that you are a security organization. But do those kinds of people exist on your organization? That's kind of like block business functions, like, oh no, you can't do that because that would make us way too, vulnerable.
For me, if you're asking me personally about my team, absolutely no. It just doesn't really want to work, right?
So those people don't exist. You wouldn't, if someone from the business came up, I want to do this, even though it on initial sound, it sounds ludicrously risky. The first response wouldn't be no.
That's right. This is a thing that I spend a lot of time talking about. I've done kind of endless presentations about this. We So this was one of the things that I started when we kind of communicating the value of security. We're not here to say no, absolutely not, right? I mean, there's just probably you can come up with some, get into the best bad ideas kind of like category of like things that I probably would say no to, but unless we're talking about that or it's some kind of egregious compliance regulatory kind of issue, absolutely, I'm here to work with you and help you manage the risk that you are kind of getting into by doing this activity you want to do. And there's good reasons why you want to do that. And if I understand what those reasons are, then I can help you put controls around it and guardrails, right, around your control so that you will not fly off the road and die in a flaming whatever the word is, car crash.
All right, I'm going to get to this question from Anatoly. He actually asked this early on. It's similar to others, but he's talking about, what do you think is the most difficult process to address when you're working with the different business units? And I will ask you, Ed, the toughest one to deal with.
I don't know that I would have like a specific example. I would say that what makes those the toughest is pure and simply when they're not aligned. The objectives are not aligned. They're incented at two completely bipolar areas. That makes the problem very difficult and usually escalates in some sort of way.
All right, we got just a few minutes. I want to squeeze this one in too. Jonathan Sneed, I like this question. What is your favorite question to ask when you get pitched what sounds like a horrible idea? So one of these awful ideas, and they're serious about it. They want to have this live streaming event. And how would you sort of make that sort of cogent question and response to that, David Peach? You get a horrible, horrible idea. How do you deal with it?
Tell me why you want to do. What are you trying to achieve by doing this? What's the goal? And then maybe if you understand the goal, then you can either help them change the idea or keep the idea the same with some guardrails around it to see if there are, so they still achieve their goals with it being less car crash potential.
I'll give you an answer to that. Quick answer for you, to you, Ed, and we'll wrap this up. You get a horrible idea, which I'm sure there's never been a bad idea at Kenneth Security. It's nothing but good ideas. What's a question you ask to find out the core of it?
I mean, how would you want me to guide you on doing this in a secure fashion?
I like that.
I like that too as well. All right, hold on. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to just go over a couple last minute items before we roll out of here. Whoops. Where did this go? There we go. Whoops. There we go. Sharing that screen. All right. Next Friday is Hacking the Speed of Business. That link is long gone now. Hopefully you clicked on it. If not, you can always go to CISOseries.com and click the register for video chats button to find the link to register for that. So please do that. Okay. What we also want to need to do is stick around for a meetup. Guess what? There's a link now at the bottom of the screen. You can click on that right now. It's totally fine. Click on it, open up the window. You can register with Google account or an email address. As I understand, you can do it that way now. So join us at the meetup. It's a lot of fun. 5 meetings, each 5 minutes long, with another random cyber professional. People have actually ended up doing business with people through these, or initiated business. Not enough to form a business in 5 minutes, but initiated. Hey, why don't you tell all your friends to join us every Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. We do this. It's a lot of fun, if you didn't already realize that. And huge thanks to Kenneth Security. Thank you so much for sponsoring the CISO Series video chat. And congratulations on your being under the giant Cisco umbrella. That is fantastic. Kudos to you, Ed. That's awesome. And again, I appreciate taking 98% credit for that actually happening. I'm sure that this was discussed in your months of negotiation with them. All right. Would you like to sponsor video chat? Your company, would you like to do one of these? It's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of stuff that comes with it, not just this actual video chat. Just email me at david@cisoseries.com, and we'll make that happen. I believe at the end of June, we have 1 or 2 dates available. All right. This is it. We're going to wrap this up now because we're less than a minute away. I want to thank Ed Bellis, who's the CTO and co-founder of Kenneth Security. And this, I think this is like your 4th appearance on one of these. How many have you done?
That feels about right.
I think it might be a 4. You've done extraordinarily well. And David Peach, who I've had on the podcast before, thank you very much for joining us on this video chat right now. Everybody click the link at the bottom of the screen now and join us over at the meetup, and we'll have fun with it. Just give me a second. I got to move some lights around, but I'll be right there. Take us